figured it's time to. Yeah, I don't like doing politics on the. So but in the broader sense of that, I think it's time for get on a soapbox for a little bit. Thinking. Again, it's one of those little kind of state of the fandom situations, but it's like, look at this thing of why we're in the screwed up situation we're in, and hopefully, it's a case of the other side has finally pushed too far. And the backlash will be coming soon and hard and fast, and it won't be pretty, but they're fine. They're basically showing these. They've long, these are the types that have long ran on the thing of we're the most tolerant, progressive types around, and brought a lot of people who were, brought them along with it. But the thing is, it's turned out a lot of folks have been what actually Lenin called useful idiots. They don't really know the real agenda. They're starting to finally show the real agenda now, and it is nothing tolerant or progressive about it. It is totalitarianism, and it's Orwell written large here. Because they're no longer just saying you have to to put up with this. They're now you have to endorse these thoughts. You have to you're just thinking wrong. They're trying to make a criminal offense, type thing. That's the whole thing with hate speech. What the hell is hate speech? Okay? And they're running right smack up against the system, which is set in place to prevent this sort of thing. The First Amendment is specifically about unpopular speech. Okay? There's a reason why even the ACLU, these back in the day, defended the right of the Ku Klux Klan, to march down, the American Nazis, to march through Skokie, Illinois, which is a heavily, Jewish area with a lot of Holocaust survivors at the time. Because if you can't defend the indefensible stuff, then, it's easy to defend the easy crap, okay? No, it doesn't need defense. They wouldn't need a First Amendment if all it was just happy, happy, joy, joy, all the time. And people are losing sight of that. That's why free speech is not just the First Amendment, and because I think a large number of the Bill of Rights, there's kind of an implied at the end of the Congress should make that. There should an implied, and you shouldn't either. It's not just about legally protected rights. It's also part of a national philosophy. This is what we believe as a nation, as a new country. That you don't restrict people's ability, to speak their minds, and address issues. That, and in fact, the one thing, just touching briefly the Second Amendment, it doesn't say anything about Congress making no laws. This is flat out, and this is kind of blanket everybody. The right of the people to keep their arms shall not be infringed. Period. I mean, the militia thing is part of, the qualifier thing, because somebody you need a justification for it. But also back then, the militia was everybody, and even that is irrelevant because they're talking about, because could have just said because heffalumps and woozles are running around. The right of the people keep their arms shall not be infringed, because the definite clause: the right of the people shall not be infringed. No, I couldn't keep my arms shall. But that's enough of that. But and yes, that was garbled, but I'm gonna leave it because it's kind of state of mind I'm in here. But the presumption of innocence, which is you can't the right to, the Fifth Amendment, where the right to not incriminate yourself. That kind of goes to the Vic thing, where it's like you can't everyone is presumed innocent until you're proven guilty. That's not just a court of law. That should be the philosophy of everyone. You don't just go on knee-jerk, ye did this, well, prove it. It's one of those things, we're all from Missouri, show me. But we're, they're trying to, infiltrate, and where everything is, totalitarian. No, you must do this or you are an evil person. Kind of going back to the the Harvard study of the tribes. We're dealing with people who literally do not understand the other side. Because they broke us down of where, the moderates and right, they then there are five major areas of understanding, and I'll put a link back in there to that article, but it's like conservatives and moderates and someone, they work in all five. They understand everyone's argument, but the real rabble just have no clue about the thought process. And these people think the conservatives aren't just wrong; they think they are evil. And whenever asked to predict what a conservative response is, they're almost invariably wrong. Which is kind of how they think the conservatives are Nazis, when they're about as far from Nazis as humanly possible. Because think about this for a second. For those of you who are inclined to believe everyone is not, who would disagree with me as a Nazi. What were the Nazis? Totalitarian, the government, either owns everything or is in charge of everything. And you only get to play along as long as you're playing along with the government. You can be thrown into a concentration camp for being Jewish or a gypsy or whatever, or Hitler just doesn't like you that week. What are conservatives? Small government. Government gets out of the lies. Leave the people alone. Say what you want, but as long as you're not on the streets tearing the children or the horses, who cares? That's conservatism. Low taxes, low government, leave me alone. How is that Nazism? Most straight-thinking people, no matter where your political affiliation, will say, yeah, right. But these are people who say, it just is. Because you're a Nazi. You don't see it. And they've gotten to the point where they've tried, they're fighting it out in the government, and then we're fighting it in microcosm in popular culture. They're trying to force it through, like claiming, diversity, in Star Trek Discovery. We're introducing diversity. We invented diversity, you morons! We're doing the thing of a diverse, ethnically varied cast before your mothers were born half the time. Never mind before you were around. And you wonder why we're getting cheesed off at all this crap, okay? Well, you're just old, you to move on. You're just old and tired and you need to progress. No, it doesn't. If anything, society is still trying to catch up to Star Trek on a lot of levels, okay? So no, it doesn't need to modernize and move on. The world needs to finally catch up and move on. It's regressing. Because we're listening to morons like, Alyssa Milano. Sorry, there's a few points you're right on, but there's other things you are so far off the mark, you're not even funny anymore. Sex strike by a bunch of women who wouldn't want to screw with a 10-foot dildo anyway. The only ones you're punishing are the ones you've already got under your thumb. And I'd like to, echo the points. Thank you for recognizing the way to avoid abortions is abstinence. Don't screw like rabbits. Don't get pregnant. You don't need an abortion now, do you? And I've gone another way. Yes, I know it is a much more nuanced subject matter because you are dealing with a human life, either potential or otherwise. A lot of the argument is where do you draw the line of when it becomes a baby and when it's just a mass of cells. And do you, draw the line at viability, or do you go with some of these, twits out there and say, oh, even after the child's born, you have to, maybe the mom doesn't want it, you can kill it. Which, I don't know. But I think the backlash is happening faster and, more, quickly and more fiercely now. When they try and pull this crap on our popular culture and our entertainment, because that is the one refuge we have to try and get away from this stuff. Where it's not shoved in our faces, and it's, And you want to talk about representation. How about misrepresentation? Where the one time you do see your side on there, you're portrayed as some evil Nazi wannabe. How does that go over, do you think? Not well. Because, like, original Star Trek, A Private Little War. Every person on that set, I think it's safe to say, from Roddenberry on down to the guy who swept up afterwards and turned out the lights, was against the Vietnam War. And what do you have in that episode? Kirk arguing the case for the war. Acknowledging, yes, it was a bloody, brutal thing, went on bloody year after bloody year. But there was no way out of it. And you can't just pull out, or you can't just arm your side with nukes and end it. You gotta play the game, and everybody loses. That was Captain Kirk. That was your sexy playboy who's screwing green chicks everywhere. No, he's arguing in favor of the Vietnam War at the time. This was 1967, 68 when this episode aired. LBJ was still in. This is when you have kids march the street. Hey, LBJ, how many babies did you bomb today? How many kids did you kill? However, it's probably very crowd to crowd. And the icon of progressive hippie culture is saying, well, what do you do? So that's another thing the Star Trek used to do. You didn't just say do that. They thought it through. What then? That's why for all the crap that Stephen Moffat gets for Doctor Who and anything, one of the best moments I think was during the Zygon storyline when Peter Capaldi breaks it down to this. No, this is scale. This is war on the micro scale. Okay, what do you do if you win? And then what? It's like, do you celebrate? Do you have any? It's like, this is where how many billions of lives have to be lost before you finally do what you should have done in the first place? Sit down and talk. And we're dealing with people who don't even want to sit down and talk. They just want to wrap around and feel like they're a part of something big because they're marching the streets. They're, protesting. They're going to make, then what? What happens when you get your perfect world? When everyone is thinking the same thing and nobody, and the patriarchy is gone and there's no evil white men running things. What then? What do you think is going to happen when you get your little perfect world? Or you start getting close to it? I think it's safe to say right now, you're not going to get that perfect world, Sparky, because guess what? The backlash is happening, and it's not just, evil white old men like me who are protesting. It's everyone else who goes, hey, what did they do with it, Speaking personally, my family's not been involved in slaves since like 1840. Yes, I'll cop to it. My family did own slaves back in the day. But my particular branch of it left Virginia around 1840, and there was no slaves in that line, okay? And they also like to think that we invented slavery. No, slavery had been around, and still around in parts of the world, but it had been around for thousands upon thousands of years. What we don't get enough credit for is the fact that we went to a bloody war to end slavery. Talk reparations, count up the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of dead on both sides to end slavery in this country. There's your reparations. And down here in the South, it's like, all the families up north are affected by the war. Down here, every family in the South was affected by that damn war. One way or another. And I did a little digging. I think our great-great-grandfather was, at the Texas Infantry Unit. And Artillery Unit. So yeah, every family was affected by that war. And not everyone was fighting for slavery. Talk about Shelby Foote in the Civil War documents. You talk to a Yankee and ask why are you fighting for it? Well, for the preserve of the Union and abolish slavery. That's the Southerner why I fight. Because you're down here. You're in my land. You're fighting. It's like, screw it, go home. Get out of my damn territory. Get out of my state. Go home. That's why we're fighting here, But it's kind of, Yes, it's kind of a loose-ended rant, but I'm kind of going where the thing goes here, because people like these rants sometimes. So what the hell? But I think they have finally bitten off more than they can chew here, because they're not winning anybody over. It's the same, I don't know if I invented the term or coined it, but I probably didn't. I just picked it up. But I'm going to go with it. Cultural locusts. Moving from property to property and genre to genre, trying to make the world in their image. And do they stick around to appreciate it? No, they move on to the next one. They have destroyed comics. They've done their best to destroy gaming, video games. They're working their way through, sci-fi and fantasies. I'm not sure what they got left at this point. But the backlash is already starting to happen. And it's been on a long... The comics industry is pretty much dead at this point as far as major titles, because they have bitten off too much of that, and it's affecting the entire line. Unless they were to, like Marvel, unless they're going to put John Byrne in charge and he rehires a lot of old writers and artists to really revitalize that that whole brand, they're dead. It's a tax write-off for Marvel in general. Because as a self-sustaining company, nope, they ain't got a prayer anymore. DC is not far behind. Unless they get some old writers who know what the hell they're doing and can tell a good story without injecting, without elevating the agenda above everything else. Because that's another thing. It's if your agenda is more important than your story, then what the hell are you doing? Because that's what this is also about, just telling good stories. Educate along the way, Sneak them... I'm going to back up here to make this go. But if you want to... If all you're doing is agenda, then what you're doing is preaching. In which case, just... get ordained, go to a church somewhere and do a sermon there. Otherwise, leave the rest of us alone. Because if we're not in your denomination, we really don't give a crap. There we go. And also consider that unless you've actually been in the thing, because a lot of people they're new to fandom in the first place. Not just specific titles, but in general. But they come swooping in. And thinking, we're going to make Star Trek, and never thinking that it was already there long before you came along. Because science fiction and fantasy fans in general are really the most open-minded, tolerant, nice, welcoming people you can find. And it kind of goes part and parcel with being a fan of the genre, because you have to be pretty open-minded to accept some of these concepts. And follow along the story without being, oh, that's a ring? How could a ring do that if you can't, Because, science fiction and fantasy are really about these concepts anyway. It's all allegory, really, for the most part. The really good stuff is about an allegorical story, about something going on today. Or something that went on, and they want you want to think about it differently. It's like, what about, put a bit of a twist, and how's this affect you? So to come along and start trying to inject this kind of crap into a genre that was already there long before you came along, and been doing it better for decades upon decades, and to somehow claim you're doing something earth-shattering. Like, case in point, Brie Larson, thinking that she is the revelation, the coming of the female empowerment superheroes, like Wonder Woman, bitch. Linda Carter would have to have a word with you over here in the corner about female empowerment and superheroes, okay? And for that matter, let's see. Let's just rattle off the characters here. Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, Hell, even Laura, Tomb Raider. Why am I blanking on the last name? Laura Croft. I don't know why that got jammed up in there. I mean, yeah, you got the the halter top and the short swords, but you still kicked ass. Okay. And how you get a long list, just a list of DC heroes. You got Wonder Woman, you got you got Batgirl, you got Supergirl, And to claim that somehow Captain Marvel is now, they've been trying to do something with that character ever since it dawned on Marvel that the copyrights of warning, so probably by the time I wrap this up anyway. So PayPal, Patreon down below. We still need, help to get the Kingsland, guys. Come on. I want to do something good. I want to do a good, nice big buffo thing with a fancy camera. Yeah. I have access to a fairly fancy camera, so we can put this phone to rest for a while. So, links down below. We'll talk at you later.